What is going on, Trash Talkers? We're back with another episode for you. Today, we're talking about Kevin Holland versus Marvin Vettori in this week's UFC matchup. I can't wait to jump right into this. Let's get it started. All that and much more coming your way right now. All right, Nick. Well, we learned about a week ago that Kevin Holland will actually be fighting this weekend, and surprise, surprise, he will be fighting Marvin Vettori during the main event of this weekend's fight night. Why don't you tell us a little bit about what we should expect to see?
Yeah, this definitely came as a surprise. We found out pretty much last minute that Darren Till broke his collarbone. And then we had to figure out, okay, who's going to step in, who's going to take this fight. And surprise, surprise, it's Kevin Holland. 21 days later, he wants to put on a second fight. He wants retribution for that loss to Derek Brunson. And he thinks that Marvin Vettori is the perfect opponent for him to make that comeback. And so we now have this fight scheduled for Saturday. And it's pretty solid matchup, right? When you look at Marvin Vettori, most of his wins have come from decision. He goes the length of the fight most of the time. When he finishes his fight, it's usually by submission. Only twice has he ever finished a fight by knockout. He's never done it in the UFC. And then for Kevin Holland, he's just a knockout monster. He'll put your lights out from his back, as you saw in previous fights. He can do it from any position. He is a scary guy to go up against, and he's not a guy that Marvin Vettori should be taking lightly. When you look at this fight, it's one of the last few fights we're going to find at the Apex Center in the 25-foot cage. And when you look at the matchup, this actually bodes well for Marvin Vettori, who is more of a grappler. He doesn't have the BJJ belt to back it up, but he does prefer to be on the ground, especially when he's up against a guy like Kevin Holland. And you saw Kevin Holland a few weeks ago against Derek Brunson. When he's on the ground, he struggles a little bit. His game is not as strong as it is standing up. He's a much better striker. Marvin Vettori is a great striker in his own right, but I think that he's safer on the ground and he'll have a lot more success there. And I think this is going to be a very tough matchup for Kevin Holland, who is going to have a tough time putting him down, a guy who has shown he has a very durable chin. And in his last fight, Marvin Vettori had a great outing against a big opponent in Jack Hermanson. He made him look silly. He won pretty much every round in that fight, and he proved that he's one of the top dogs in the middleweight division. Now, when we're putting it all together, I believe that Kevin Holland has what it takes to get the job done in this one. As we've seen leading up to this fight, Kevin Holland has been on his A game. He is not being loud and he's not taking this lightly as he was against Derek Brunson. He learned his lesson in that one. He knows now to shut his mouth, to do his job, and then to celebrate afterwards. Except Marvin Vettori is taking the Kevin Holland approach from his previous fight. He's talking about how he is the rightful owner of the number one contender spot. He thinks that should take Darren Till's spot just because he wasn't able to make it to fight night. He thinks that should be given everything to him and that he doesn't have to earn it, which is the exact approach that we saw from Kevin Holland. I truly expect Kevin Holland to use this as his bounce pad to come back and make his return to the top of the UFC in the middleweight division. I think that Marvin Vettori is taking this a little too lightly, and Kevin Holland is going to pounce on that.
Yeah, I mean, I take a look at this fight and I'm taking a look at, what these guys can do. And, it just kind of shoots out to me that Kevin Holland struggled on the ground against Derek Brunson. And that's kind of where his weakness lies. And when I take a look at what Marvin Vettori can bring to this octagon and bring to this fight, I believe that he's going to have somewhat of an advantage taking a look at that film and just saying, listen, Kevin Holland, his takedown defense is absolute garbage. And he definitely didn't learn in 21 days. I mean, he needs to find a way to be able to stop those takedowns. And listen, I'm not comparing Marvin Vettori and Derek Brunson as takedown artists, but at the same time, these guys do both specialize in being able to take their opponents down. I think Kevin Holland's going to struggle mightily with that. And if I'm Marvin Vettori, my game plan is to get him to the ground and hold him there often. The Kevin Holland, on the other hand, I think he has a different advantage. He's 3 inches taller. He's got a 7 inch arm reach. I mean, there is a ton of physical attributes that go Kevin Holland's way in this fight. I believe that he is going to be able to take on Marvin Vettori standing up. And if he wants any shot at winning this fight and getting retribution from that Derek Brunson fight only 21 days ago, he's going to have to keep it on his feet.
I mean, when you look at other fighters who have had massive arm reaches like Kevin Holland does, I look no further than Francis Ngannou versus Stipe Miocic too, where Stipe was looking to shoot and he couldn't because he didn't have the reach on him. He had to try to work his way around it, but Francis Ngannou kept him at a distance. It made it very hard for Stipe to shoot, and when he did shoot, his takedown defense was able to get the job done. And that's exactly what Kevin Holland has to do. If Marvin Vettori decides to shoot at some point, he's got to be able to defend the takedown. If he gets taken down, I fully expect it to be the same result as we've seen in the past. Like you said, his defense on the ground has not improved in the last 3 weeks. It may have gotten a little better, but very little. And I think that Marvin Vettori is going to have the upper hand when it comes to the ground game. But I truly expect Kevin Holland to be on his A game and to keep Marvin Vettori at a distance and just chip away at his chin.
Yeah, I mean, we talk about Stipe Miocic trying to get Francis Ngannou down and how Ngannou stuffed that approach. Well, don't forget Ngannou had an entire camp to work on that ability and his ability to stuff Stipe's trying to get him to the ground. Kevin Holland again took this fight on 7 days' notice, or 7 days
Well,
from
yes,
today.
you can say that, right? But you also have to look. Derek Brunson and Marvin Vettori are very similar fighters. So Kevin Holland had that 6 week camp getting ready for Derek Brunson. It's very similar to getting ready for Marvin Vettori. So it's
Yes.
you're merely cleaning him up, getting him tuned back up, and he's ready to go.
Yes and no, because Derek Brunson is, in my opinion, a much better fighter than
For sure.
Marvin Vettori is. But at the same time, Kevin Holland didn't do anything that gives me confidence that he's going to be able to handle the ground game against Marvin Vettori if he gets there.
Yeah, I agree with you, but I just don't believe it's going to get to that point. And Kevin Holland has shown he can survive on the ground. He may not win the round, but he can survive and make it to the next round. And that's when Kevin Holland's going to fix his game in between rounds. He'll reset. And Derek Brunson was a lot closer in arm and height reach to Kevin Holland. So it was a much more difficult matchup for Kevin Holland. I think that this is going to be a much different story, and I don't see this going the distance.
So I'm going to take a look, as we always do with these UFC fights, and I have my trusty sports book up here right now, taking a look at the betting odds for this fight. Marvin Vettori actually comes in at a minus 360 favorite against Kevin Holland, who is plus 275. Actually shocking to me, just because Kevin Holland was projected to be the number one contender if he had beaten Derek Brunson. He lost that fight, and now he has to face Marvin Vettori just to get back into the conversation of should he have a title contention in the near future. Otherwise, if he loses this fight, it is a downward spiral for Kevin Holland. So I think Las Vegas is taking a look at this and saying, you know what, we gotta favor Marvin Vettori at this point in time. A lot of the odds go for either a decision or a Kevin Holland knockout. Most of what you talked about early in this video was that Marvin Vettori's fights usually end in decision or submission, and most of Kevin Holland's fights end in a knockout or decision. They're taking decision as the number one priority, and then it's a Kevin Holland knockout, and that's pretty much it. I think if you're going to take decision, you go Vettori. If you're going knockout, you got to go Holland. So I would parlay either one of those two together if you were looking to bet on this fight.
Yeah, I think that, I mean, when you look at Marvin Vettori in his previous fights, he's got a granite chin. It's going to be very hard for Kevin Holland to knock this guy out. But I think Kevin Holland has sneaky power. He doesn't have a big frame, but he has sneaky power for his size. And I think that he's going to be able to knock him out. I think that this is going to end in the first 3 rounds of the fight. I really don't see this going to the championship rounds. And I don't know if Marvin Vettori has what it takes to stay in there much longer than that.
Yeah, I mean, you know me, right? I'm a Kevin Holland fan. I have been for a little bit
Who
now, and
isn't? Who isn't?
right? I mean, this guy reminds me of a younger version of Israel Adesanya. So of course, I had to jump on that train as soon as I recognized that out of him. I'm actually going to take Kevin Holland in this fight. I believe that he has what it takes to take on Marvin Vettori. Call me a homer. Call me somebody who's just truly rooting for Kevin Holland. Either way, I do think that he has what it takes to stop Vettori. He's going to keep it up on his feet, and I do believe he's actually going to knock him out. I think about a third round knockout at this point. I think that's exactly where it's going to come from, early in the third round. At that, I think he's going to get a little momentum going in the second round, and then in the third round, it's going to be all Kevin Holland, and he's going to just capitalize on it. All right, well, that's going to do it for now. Thank you all for watching. Make sure to like this video and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Hit that notification bell. We go live every single day. That'll be all. Peace and love.